Hey everyone, Ghostmo here, and welcome to my first ever episode of my new series, Trail Signs. This will be my new, semi-regular series where I invite another member of the outdoor YouTube community, be it another creator or somebody who has been a supporter of the channel for some time, to come on and talk a little bit more about some of the more esoteric topics amongst backpacking. In these episodes, we'll take a deep dive look into some of the topics that include the reasons, philosophies, and some of the fun things that we've experienced while we've been out on the trail. The idea behind this series came about from some of the conversations that I had with some of the really awesome people I've met through the creator experience, including this episode's guest, Tiff from Love Dogs. We had a lot of fun in this discussion and covered a lot of ground, but I do have to give a little bit of a caveat to this video. This is a new experience for me and something that I don't have a lot of previous time doing. And the recording on this, Tiff's recording looks great. Mine, because my internet sucks, did not turn out so well. So in the future, I will be making ways to fix that. However, I'm guessing you guys aren't probably here to see my ugly mug any more than you have to anyways. So just bear in mind that the video quality isn't the greatest, but the subject matter definitely speaks for itself. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you'll come back for further episodes as we move on down the trail in search of more trail signs.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Ghost Mule here, and I want to welcome you to my new story segment here that I actually have no idea what I'm going to call yet, but we'll get to that eventually. But basically what this is going to be an opportunity for me to chat with some of the cool people that I have met along the journey, fellow outdoor creators that have I've had the pleasure of meeting and chatting with, and I want to talk about different topics that are a little bit more in depth in the outdoor community and a little bit less about, gear and things like that that normally gets talked about. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not the direction I want to take in this. So this whole idea behind this came about as I was having conversations with the co-host that I have this evening, Tiff from Love Dogs. This kind of came about from conversations that we had just in our own time and exploring some deep and meaningful topics in the backcountry. And then, of course, I also want to give a little bit of a shout out to my buddy Jim from Lost Again with Jim, who's not been as active lately. But this is also kind of a continuation of a show that I did with him a couple times, Ask a Backpacker. So I just want to make sure I give credit where credit's due. But anyways, without further ado, I've got my coffee ready, decaf because it's late, and I want to take an opportunity. There you go. It's a little
Is
hotter
that
there in
product
Texas.
placement? I should probably not. Probably shouldn't do that.
Nobody's gonna watch anyways.
Not
But anyways,
sponsored.
not sponsored. No, we are not. But at this time, I want to introduce. I'm going to call him co-host. Why not? Because it's not really a host guest thing. But Tiff from Love Dogs. Tiff is also an outdoor creator, and I'll let you talk a little bit about your channel.
Oh, I have to talk now. So my channel is kind of in a transition stage right now, but it's more or less all things outdoors and with dogs. I have two dogs, Jaffe and Hazel, and pretty much everything I do outdoors is with them. And my goal is to kind of just show that it's possible to do it safely and with others' enjoyment and safety in mind as well. So, yeah, and then the reason it's in transition right now is kind of because I just got a van and the dogs and I moved into the van full time. So we're trying our hand at van life. So it's a little bit, the channel has transitioned a little more towards van life, though I really don't like that term because it's not a Sprinter van, but it is a van. So
it's so much cooler than a Sprinter van, though. Let's be honest. I love the retro.
I think so. I think
I think it's amazing, and I have to say I am completely jealous. The whole van life thing is definitely something that appeals to me, and the fact that you were able to take that leap and just go into it, almost almost half cocked, if you will, is just really impressive to me. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about some of that later. But kudos to
Yeah,
you, man. That's awesome.
thanks. I had a lot of help.
That's I think some of the lines we're going to talk about tonight is about how help kind of shows up when we least expect it and kind of propels us along whether we want it to or not. All right, so along those lines, we're going to talk a little bit about a phrase that is pretty commonly used in the backcountry. And this, again, came directly out of a conversation that you and I had previously had, which is kind of why I wanted to start here. And that is the phrase, the trail provides. So, of course, the trail provides is a phrase I think it gets used more in long distance hiking, which I think you have some experience in, versus those of us that do more of the weekend warrior stuff. But that said, I do think that it has definitely application to all people on the trail. I think everybody probably has some story of how the trail kind of provided for some of them in something that maybe they didn't expect or anticipated that kind of helped them along. And so, in a sense, to me, it's kind of like a life philosophy as well. And that,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to me how it correlates in all aspects of life, how sometimes things just work out. Like, I think we are kind of pre-programmed to think about what could potentially be bad. And that sometimes causes us to not really think about, well, all the good things that could happen from it. So my first question in this is that what does the phrase "the trail provides" mean to you?
The trail provides. Well, of course, it's going to mean something different to everyone, I think, depending on what you're doing. But if you're segment hiking, for example, which is what I did with the Colorado Trail over 7 years, there are a lot of things about segment hiking that I think is harder than through hiking because there are a lot more logistical things to work out. And you're mostly, if you're segment hiking, most often people are doing so because they have jobs that they have to get back to. And so that puts them on a time restriction and they've got to get from trailhead to trailhead in a certain amount of time, which that's hard in and of itself because as you and I both know, a lot can happen on the trail and you've got to be ready for anything. You can't just plan on leaving the trailhead at such and such time and having a perfect hike to the end and getting there right on time and all of that. Things go wrong and you've got to have to improvise from time to time. So, if you're segment hiking, that meaning, that phrase, the trail provides, can refer to a lot of just little things along the trail, like anything from weather. Like, I don't know, if photographers tend to think that bad weather is good weather for photos because you tend to get great skies after storms and things like that. But if you're segment hiking and you're on a deadline, you might be hoping for good weather, and if you get it, I think that's one example of the trail providing. If everything works in your favor and you actually get off the trail in your allotted amount of time and you're back to work on time, then that's one kind of smaller way that you could say the trail provides. But also, like, I'm thinking of one example when I was out there with a friend and the dogs. Well, actually, at the time, I only had one dog. I had Monty at the time. And something happened to my friend. She injured her knee, and we were getting off trail before planned. And it was a long hitch back to either of our vehicles. We were trying to get to her vehicle because it was a little bit closer. And it was a pretty remote section of trail. And we just decided, well, we can't go on, so we've got to get off. So we got off trail. We made the first hitch. We found somebody who was going to basically give us a ride halfway. And then, so we got to that point and it was getting dark and it was raining and it was cold. And I was starting to get a little bit concerned. And this truck pulled up and offered us a ride. And basically he said, the only reason I stopped was because I knew nobody else would. And we were probably 10 or 15 miles yet away from her car. And so that to me was an example of, the trail provides. I don't know if anybody else would have picked us up if he hadn't, but I don't know, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most straightforward way of talking about the trail provides is it does seem to always kind of provide those things that you need at the time that you need them. So like maybe it's a water source, like you just start to run out of water. I remember when we were on a trip in the Bighorns, and like normally the water is everywhere, and this particular trail just was a lot drier and it was heavily vegetated, so we couldn't get to the river that we were walking along, and so we had no water. And I think we both just ran out of water, and within not even a mile after that, this perfect little water source just popped right up. And it's like those moments
Nice.
where it's just like something just kind of happens. um, Sometimes it might be finding that perfect campsite out of nowhere, things like that. But I also think that it can kind of go a little bit deeper into the idea that, oftentimes we don't think about what the trail provides us personally. Sometimes that trail provides that perfect opportunity to kind of leave everything behind and refocus your energy or your goals or whatever, or just to be able to get away from life for a little while. And so I think in that sense, the trail can provide a lot of different ways. Just kind of you know, uh, it's nothing more than just an excuse to kind of get away for a little while. So there's so many
Yeah,
different
well,
ways.
I was just gonna say, I think also where you're getting at is just emotionally or mentally the way the trail provides too. Because I just actually recently told somebody that was telling them about the Colorado Trail and how it took me 7 years to finish. But a lot can happen in somebody's life in 7 years, and I feel like the Colorado Trail, like I basically walked the Colorado Trail through the last 7 years of my life. So all of the crap that happened during that time, like I walked it out on the trail. That's, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's not how I intended it to play out. I The reason I started was kind of twofold. I had a really ornery dog that needed something to do to get her energy out, and also I grew up in a really rural area connected to nature, and sort of, I had wilderness in my backyard, and then my career took me to more populated areas, and I desperately wanted to get back to the wilderness area. And so that was the other reason I started, but it ended up being this 7 year long journey. you know this is why people write books about walking long trails. It really, there is something that happens in that time when you're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have not had an opportunity to do as long a trail or experience yet. As I announced in my previous video, I'm looking to do a long for me trip that I think is going to have a lot of impact. But also on a personal level, I've talked about it at length, so I won't go into it too deeply here. But the trail provided me an opportunity to help with my mental health as far as my PTSD and things like that. So you know, I think that you could go into so many different branches and directions with the philosophy behind the trail provides. But even if you just focus on the more in front of you idea of, maybe you need a little snack and berries pop up on the trail or something, whatever it is. But yeah, that definitely is, one of those things I think that can apply to a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Yeah,
And I'm sure
absolutely.
everybody, yeah, and I'm sure everybody has some sort of really cool story that goes along with ways that they've experienced trail providing on trail. You
Hmm.
shared one. Do you have any others you want to share, or you just want to go with that one and I can give mine, or how do you want to do it?
I probably have countless. We can start with that one for me. Let's hear one of yours.
Sure. So, for me, one of the biggest ones that I always remember is I was doing a solo weekend trip, and I actually had somebody offer to drive me and then pick me up, and so I didn't have my car at the trailhead. I was somebody was going to come get me, and so I was hiking out, and I was planning on hiking or just camping in another spot along a trail. And as sometimes happens, life gets in the way. I was coming down from a set of switchbacks, and just off in La La Land, whatever, and my ankle twisted, and I just went boom, face first, right down into the trail. Back,
Oh no.
totally wiped out. And got up and started to brush myself off, and I could feel that I had injured my ankle. And I was like, shit. So I was like, I'm so far back, I'm right where I was planning on camping, but I knew that if I went ahead and camped there, I was going to have a hard time making it to the trailhead by the time my ride was supposed to be able to pick me up. And I knew that there was a place to camp at the trailhead, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to power through, and I'm going to go sit, and I'll just camp at that spot. And that way I don't have to worry about it, because I know as soon as I take my shoe off, my ankle is just going to swell, and I might not, be able to get my shoe back on. So I went ahead and powered through, and I got to the trailhead, and I sat down against a rock and pulled out my water bottle, and it was pretty busy. So I was like, well, I'm going to wait a little while before I go back there, because I don't want to be the weird guy that's setting up camp while everybody's moving in and out of the trailhead. So I just sat there and kind of watched the clouds go by, and I must have looked extra pathetic because a family pulled up, and this particular area in the Beartooth, there's a little. It's an old ranch that was put in before it was a national forest. It's called Senior Camp, and it's all privately owned still, even though it's within the national forest. And it can only be owned by the families that already own them. Long story, but anyways, places where people have these cabins, and they're really cool looking cabins. And this truck pulls up, the whole big family gets out and everything, and they're having a great time. And I'm talking to, they chat with me, and they're like, well, what's going on with you? And I was like, oh, I told them my situation. And they're like, oh, hey, we got a cabin right up there. Why don't you just come up and hang out with us? And we got food and everything else. And I was like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't impose on you for that. And they're like, well, we're going to go for a little bit of hike. When we come back out, if you change your mind, you can hang out with us. And so I, sure, no problem. I was like, I'm not doing that. Sure enough, 15, 20 minutes go by, they come back out, and they're insistent. And so I finally caved, and it was a wonderful night. We sat around a campfire. I mean, I don't think my beer went dry the entire night. They had a whole big food spread. They're like, we're going to get rid of it anyways. We can run home tomorrow. And it was an awesome night. And, I limped my way back to the trailhead after the next morning. And it was just a really cool experience that I would not have had the situation not presented itself. So sometimes what seems like a shitty thing can actually lead to that trail providing. In this case, it really did.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good story. I like that.
Yeah, it was completely out of the blue. The only bad part is that I had them write their address down. I was going to send them a gift card from our store because they lived in Billings and everything, and I lost it as I was hiking back, and so I never got an opportunity to thank them. So
okay, so if you're watching this video, send Kalman your address.
Yeah, stop in the base camp.
There you go.
So that's cool. That's probably my biggest example. It's really like, weekend warriors don't typically get what we would call trail magic. There's just not as many opportunities. Every once in a while, you might be sitting there getting water, and somebody comes along and thinks you look a little bit dirtier than, hands you a beer, or, an apple or something.
Or if you're like me and you're section hiking, you feel bad accepting trail magic because you're like, oh, no, I'm just out here for 2 days. I can't. Like, please don't give me a beer. I couldn't because I'm not worthy,
That's exactly how I felt. I was just sitting there. I'm like, man, I just got to set up camp. Like I'm a dumbass that fell on the trail. Like, I don't deserve this, but it was a great time. So,
yeah, that was funny. It kind of reminds me it reminded me of one particular trip that when I was segment hiking the CT, we came around the corner, and this must have been just a notorious place for like downpours because it was pouring rain, and we came around a corner, and there was a little sign that said trail magic and pointed down under the rock, and underneath the rock was a tarp. I was like, okay, this was the first time I've ever seen a tarp left as trail magic, but it was absolutely pouring at that time. So I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but Yeah, we used it for a little while and then folded it up and put it back under the rock and kept hiking.
My buddy Chris is the only name I'll say. I won't, incriminate him, but his favorite story of trail magic was he was out hiking and he was crossing a stream and he looked down and he saw a 6-pack of beer in the stream and he looked
Oh my
down and goes, "Oh
gosh.
wow, a 6-pack of beer!" And so he pops one off and takes off and he goes, "It must have been trail magic." And he's like, "I don't know, man. I think you might have just ripped somebody's beer off."
Yeah,
I don't think
because
that qualifies.
people do leave their beer in cold creeks to get it cold, nice and cold.
Yeah. So somewhere
Oh
out there,
well.
some guy's like,
Oops.
"Did a marmot take my beer? What?"
It's an honest mistake, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Knowing Chris, it was probably on purpose. So,
That's
anyways,
hilarious.
back to this here. So, do you think that this phrase / philosophy of the trail provide also transposes into everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think people in everyday life probably call it a number of different things, but being the backpackers that we are, of course, we have our own lingo. So I absolutely would call, things that happen sort of serendipitously in everyday life, I would call that the trail providing. Um, I definitely think that the situation that came up with me getting the van is definitely the trail provides. I like I don't know if this kind of falls sort of in with what we're talking about, but like at the beginning of every new year, you know how people often will like choose a word that represents or they want to represent the whole coming year. Um, I actually chose the word magic for 2024. And I chose it kind of like tongue in cheek because, like, I don't really believe in magic, but at the same time, like, I want to believe in magic. Like, I really want this year to be completely different than years previous. And, like, I'm open to really cool shit happening. Like, bring it on. I'm ready. Like, bring on the magic. And what was really interesting is I found the van at the end of January, so I chose the word magic, right? And then I found the van at the end of January, and then some things fell into place financially that helped me be able to get the van in February. And so, like, once all of that happened, things just sort of like fell like dominoes. And then the next thing I know, I'm in the van full time. I've checked out of my back house apartment. Like, I turned in my keys and I'm on this whole other path that I had always wanted to do, but never really fully thought would actually ever happen. And so I absolutely call that, you know, trail magic or the trail providing, whatever you want to call it. But like, that's my most, I guess, recent and in the front of my mind situation of real life kind of trail providing, trail magic sort of thing.
Yeah, that's
Because
awesome.
it was really uncanny, like how the van happened. Just, I mean, and one of the things on your list of where you wanted to go with this was sort of this taking the leap thing. I don't know if I'm jumping the gun going here already, but
Go for it.
um, there was no way, like, there had been times in the past where I had made enough money on a photo project to buy a van, like an old used cargo van that like was completely stripped inside that I would have had to build out myself. And I was like envisioning just throwing a old crappy mattress in the back and moving into it and saying, "All right, this is my van. This is my house." But I let my I mean, we're trained to think that certain things have to be in place before you take that scary jump. And so all those previous times that I actually could have bought a van, I talked myself out of it. I like various reasons, but like this isn't the right time. I need to stay here just a little while longer. Maybe this will happen. I got to wait and see if this works out, blah blah blah. Like excuses, 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 like whole big list. And so when this happened this year, oh, well, addendum to that, every single time I talked myself out of getting the van, like it had to have happened 3 or 4 times previously in the last decade. Every single time I talked myself out, I regretted it. Within a year, I regretted it. I would feel like, man, I know this is what I want. Why don't I just listen to my gut? I should have just done it and made it work, you know, however I could just make it work. And so in January and February, when all of this started falling into place, there were again lots of little voices saying, no, you shouldn't do this yet. You've got to save up more money for an emergency fund. What the hell are you doing this without an emergency fund? Like, what are you doing? All these little voices in my head that are telling me not to do it. But then I remembered all of the times that I regretted not doing it. And I just decided it's now or never. There's never going to be that perfect time. Like, I'm never going to have the amount of money saved that I think is the right amount for an emergency fund. There's never going to be that time. And so I just basically said, screw it, keeping it polite for the kids. But like, there was just no other way. I had to do it. I knew I had to do it. Plus, getting off the Colorado Trail and actually finishing it after 7 years, when I also didn't think that was going to happen, like, my perspective just changed. I was like, when you get off trail, you're in a totally different mindset, and that's where you want to live the rest of your life. And you're just hanging on to it for as long as you possibly can. And usually you go back to work and you've lost it within like a day. It's like, what am I doing? But I tried to hang on to that feeling when I finished the CT. And so I kind of I announced it publicly when I got off the trail. I announced that I wanted to get a van and move into it full time and hit the road and travel and take more photographs in other places. Like, I announced it because I thought, okay, if I make it public, then I can't make excuses the next time I have the opportunity. Like, this is it. And so, and I just kept focused on it. Like, I looked for vans every single day from July when I got off the trail until February when I drove the van back to Lubbock. And so I got in that mindset where I guess I had just had enough. I'd had enough getting off the trail and not being happy with where I was when I was off the trail, and how like I wanted to make my life more in line with who I am and where I really wanted to be. And so I hung on to that as tight as I could from July to February. And then when all these other things just started falling into place, I just did it. And like, I'm sitting in the van right now and I'm thinking about how many things could go wrong tomorrow. My van is in 1995. Like, it's not quite as old as I am, but a lot could go wrong. And I have to just not think about it because I'm not there yet. There's no sense in worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, sometimes you just got to take the leap and worry about tomorrow.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's perfect. Like, we talked about this before, but like, it's amazing to me because it seems like the trail itself literally provided you with a mindset that you needed to do in order to take your life and your adventure in the direction that you always knew it needed to go. You just
Well,
needed that, like,
it reminded me who I am. Because I think, like, you can have all these big dreams of what you want to do with your life, and you can kind of pursue that path and then find out 25 years later that it's not really where you wanted to be after all. Or that maybe for some reason it just didn't work out, and it brings you back to really who you are. I don't know. It's hard to
no,
explain unless you've experienced it. You know what I mean?
that's true. Yeah. I think a lot of people, who don't have the opportunity to experience backpacking or something similar, they don't experience what it's like to have all of the voices of society and norms and what we're supposed to do and all the checklists and everything that's going on. When you get out on the trail, all of those voices go away, and the only thing that's left is like you've pared it down to
Is
the most
you.
exactly the most basic of things, which is your own wants and needs and desires. And it's interesting because we talk about taking leaps of faith, and the way that I was going to transition into this is, I always
Sorry.
think about, no, you're fine. It was perfect. No, it was better than I could have ever done. But like, with adventures and stuff, like oftentimes we get so caught up in, like you said, what can go wrong? Everything can go wrong. Am I going to forget this? Am I going to do this? Am I going to run into a bear? Am I going to have enough food? Am I going to all these things? And there's so many things that we could really easily just like, let us talk ourselves out of doing this adventure. Let us talk ourselves out of going on the trail. I've done it before. I've been ready to go for a trip and just completely talk myself out of it. But that said, when I don't listen to that, when I force myself to go beyond that and I take that leap and I tell myself that a trail is going to provide, everything's going to work out, never once regretted that decision. As soon as my foot hits that trail on the first step, all of that stuff is gone. And it's gone
Or
until
also, like when we were texting back and forth the other night, I think we may have gone into this territory, but like, isn't, when we say the trail provides, aren't we really meaning we provide? Like, you got to trust yourself enough to believe that you can do something. Like, you have the skills, you know what to do if you encounter a bear, you know what to do if you run out of water, or if what if you get a shitty water source? I drink so much bad water on the Colorado Trail that cows had shit in, and like, you're looking at it and thinking, I'm gonna die. But I drank it, I filtered it, and I didn't die. But like, you just have to trust in your skills, trust that you know how to use your gear and the equipment that you go out there with, and just believe that you know what to do when something goes wrong. Like, trust yourself. It really comes down to that. Like, you provide.
that is 100% true. Like you nailed it. For whatever reason, I think for some, it's just easier to say, hey, it's just this big, thing, and things just work out the way they're supposed to. But in the end, it's just, it boils down to whether or not we were willing to trust in ourselves to be able to make this big leap. And it's true in both outdoor adventures, as well as big life choices. And your experience is a perfect example of that. Mine to a lesser degree, but like, I chose to do a life that was a little bit different than many other people would, and I'm not going to say that those decisions led to an easier life, but I definitely feel like I've had a more fulfilling life. I walked away from a career that was really solid, but it was also tearing me apart. And it wasn't right for me, and I needed to make that change. And even though a lot of people, even my family, were advising me against it, best decision I ever made. But man, did it require a bunch of leaps of faith to go back to college, to move out of state. And it's never easy. And I think it's true in the trail too, because there's plenty of opportunities for things to still go wrong. But again, when you look back on it, even with all the bad stuff factored in, nobody ever regrets it.
No, not that I know of. Well, I mean, I guess there might be a couple people who maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. We should do a show about that.
Perfect.
Like, let's find the people who regretted going out.
People
It'll
that
be a
got
happy
dragged
show.
out. Right.
It'll
Yeah.
be a really happy show.
All those people that go out there and they look at, like, what the hell is wrong with these people?
But on the same token, like, I do think there's another part to that trust yourself part. It's also trust others. And we texted about this too. Like, it's not just trusting yourself. That's like the first big step. You've got to trust yourself. But also, like, the other part of that is you've got to trust other people who come into that experience with you, because we don't do this alone. Like, even my story where we had to hitchhike back to the car, like, how many times can you think of that you've been backpacking where you had to accept the kindness of a complete stranger, and you had to trust them.
Mhm.
And I kind of feel like that's similar. I feel like it's easier to do that on trail than it is in real life, but at the same time, like I was telling you, since I moved into the van full time, I've lived in Lubbock for 16, almost 17 years. And I have met more people in Lubbock since moving into the van than I ever did when I lived in the back house. And to quote my good friend, Ken, when I told him this, he says, well, it helps when you leave your house. And he has a point. But like I have had to, not had to, I chose to trust other people, like complete strangers, since being in the van. Since being in the van, I met another young lady who really wanted to learn more about the outdoors. She wants to get into hiking and backpacking, but she's not really kind of experienced in outdoorsy stuff. And so I took her on her very first hike, just in Lubbock. It wasn't a huge thing, but it doesn't need to be. And she enjoyed it. And like, we're friends now. I never knew her before then. We met at a park when I was walking the dogs. So it's interesting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it speaks a lot to the community that does exist around outdoors in general, but especially like the backpacking community is. Um, I noticed it when I first started this whole YouTube thing. Like, you go out and you put yourself out on the internet, and you hear all the horror stories about all the trolls and stuff out there. And so I prepared myself like mentally for like days. Like I know I'm gonna get crap because people are. I was not mentally prepared for the amount of support that I got. And I
Yeah, I
was just
wasn't either.
floored by that. And like, it's part of the reason where the whole thing is coming from is that I love the community that I would not have met if I hadn't taken the leap to go onto the YouTube thing. And
Yep.
sure, I get the occasional crappy comment. We all do, and for those of you that wonder, yes, the other creators do talk about those comments to each other. But
Yep.
it's vastly outweighed by the number of supportive people out there, and it's what has led me to continue to do it, and what has led me to some of my
Yep.
greatest friendships, including yourself, like people
Yep.
that I talk to almost every day that I haven't actually met in person.
Yeah, and we all talk about that a lot too. Just,
It's
I mean,
true.
almost every YouTuber, outdoor YouTuber that I've gotten to know, it's like, man, can you believe how great this community is? It's like, I mean, we get together in real life. Like I haven't attended one yet, but there are various regional outdoor YouTube creator meetups,
Hmm.
and I think that's amazing. It's
We need
wonderful.
to we need to do a West Coast version. It seems like a lot of them happen in the East Coast. Like those guys are killing it.
Yeah,
But
there was one in Texas earlier. Well, I don't remember when, but not a few months ago.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I think it's a great place to kind of to leave off in because, like I said, this whole thing is going to be about that community and talking about some of the taking a little bit more deep dive in some things that maybe we didn't always think about. And kind of giving ourselves a little bit of an opportunity to have a gear reprieve, if you will. As much
yeah,
as I love gear, I like to talk about other things too. So
yep.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories. I love your stories. I love what you're doing. It's just so awesome, and it's just really
Thanks for
cool
the
to.
idea. It's a great idea for a show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, like I say, it's a cumulative effort, but like it was just something that I felt like was going to be a leap for me because I've never done anything like this. So hopefully I'll get a little better as I go along, and we'll be able to maybe come up with a catchy title. But yeah. Um, Anything else before we head out?
No, I don't think so. Just I look forward to the next ones, the future ones on this topic.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. I got a couple of really great ideas and some great friends lined up. So, but I want to thank you for being my guinea pig and for
Anytime.
supporting me through this. So, Have a great evening. And to all of you guys, thanks for tuning in. And if you have any ideas, both of people who I should bring onto the show or topics that you would like to hear us talk about, let me know in the comments below. And as always, keep hiking or keep vanning on.